Hey, y'all. This is Dr. Carr, the Culture Docent, here to help you navigate and curate the experiences you want to have. I hope y'all have been staying warm throughout the cold snap and snowstorms that we had over this last week, all the way through the East Coast, down, extending to the South, where I'm at. Got to stay bundled up. But I want to talk to y'all today a little bit about how to be a resource when you have no resources. So it is the end of January, and many people across the US celebrated Martin Luther King Jr. Day by doing service within and for their communities. To me, this is always that signal that we are coming up on Black History Month, Lunar New Year, Ramadan, Women's History Month, Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, Juneteenth, Pride, and a bunch of other beautiful cultural happenings and celebrations in between from now all the way through the summertime. And then the months continue going, right? So for many employee resource groups or ERGs, this is their Super Bowl. Okay. This is their big dance. And I say this as a former ERG leader in both the public and private sectors. I've led a number of groups. I presented to a few different groups. And yes, we are hosting programs and doing events throughout the year, doing service throughout the year, supporting folks throughout the year. But this is really the time to shine because, in some sense, you really have to prove your worth and your relevancy as an ERG group leader, as a member. So it's unfortunate. I'm not going to lie to y'all that it really sucks that that's what's going on, but I'm not going to sugarcoat either. That's what's really happening. So outside of the commemorative events, and Heritage Month celebrations, many leaders and employees are always asking themselves, like, why do we need resource groups in the first place? And in a time where we actually have leaders and organizations, administrations that are openly hostile against diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, people are asking, are ERGs still relevant? So let's talk about it. And I want to say straight up, yes, there's no doubt they are absolutely relevant. Let's just put that out there now. But first, let's talk about, what is an ERG? So some people are going to call them business resource groups, agency resource groups. At one point, there were communities at an organization that I worked at. So your nomenclature may be different, but the spirit of the group is still the same, right? So resource groups are designed to provide employees with a forum to connect with colleagues with similar backgrounds and build a sense of community based on shared identities and experiences. They can be formally recognized, they can be informal groupings. Either way, it's going to be that shared identity that pulls them together, right? And so formal employee resource groups were actually started by Black employees at Xerox in the 1970s to help reduce racial discrimination and give Black employees access to more opportunities within the company. So they, of course, have since grown since then, right? Evolved across all different industries. Plenty of organizations have them. I just want to be clear, all organizations have them whether they realize it or not, but plenty of organizations have formal employee resource groups. So I'm gonna just put that out there. But they can be used as this lever for organizations to shape priorities, provide networking opportunities, create talent pools and pathways, amplify leadership messaging, and so much more. Actually, in my previous work, my previous consulting work, I actually contributed to research on the hidden strategic value of resource groups, which was a lot of fun, a lot of hard work being a resource group leader at the time that we were doing this research. But we created this maturity model that demonstrated what resource groups could look like when they are fully activated. I know that feels like a very consultancy corporate word, but basically when they have completely leveled up, right? So moving from that creation slash establishment of just like, is your resource group okay? We have a group for our LGBTQIA employees now, stamped. They're gonna call it whatever they're gonna call it, right? That is the most basic stage. They may put on a program, they don't really have a strategy. And really that is gonna be the most minimal impact that an ERG can provide. And so this maturity model moves us all the way to, again, that level up, that activation. And activation is really going to be when the resource group serves as a trusted advisor that provides meaningful workforce insights, effectively drives the recruiting approaches, retention strategy, workforce engagement, all the things that help employees stay, that help organizations thrive, that create a community within the space, that safety, that trust, all of those things, that is what your resource groups can actually really support. They are imperative to your talent strategy. I am speaking to all of you organization leaders out there. They are imperative to your talent strategy, whether you realize it or not. It is somewhere where you should really be tapping into and using them, not using them in the means of like that type of using, bad using. We're talking about utilizing, really leveraging what they can provide because it can be a mutually beneficial relationship. More corporate speak, right? Like they can be a force multiplier if you really let them. That's where you really want to be able to tap into certain groups and understand, how do your employees feel about things? What's that employee sentiment? What's working, what's not working, where are you headed, what are some great ideas? That is where you can really tap into your resource groups. With that being said, there are a lot of challenges that come with being in a resource group, whether you are the leader, whether you're a member, right? So they often have lack of funding. That is the number one. Resource groups don't get enough money. Period. They just don't. We don't. There is a lack of recognition for the type of work that is being done, for the people that are doing it, that are spending their time doing it. There's a lack of understanding of how the work of a resource group actually connects to the larger organization objectives and mission and vision. There's just really a disconnect, right? There's a lot of burnout for the people that are doing the work. This work is voluntary. It is extracurricular. You do not get paid to do resource group work. You may get an award every now and again, right? But that goes back to that part of that lack of recognition. Often this is thankless work but you do it because you do feel compelled for a lot of marginalized folks, like you do feel compelled to support your community in that way, especially in the workplace. But you do it because it can provide more junior employees opportunities, like mentorship opportunities, right? You do it because you want to ensure that your heritage, that your culture, and that your background is recognized and celebrated. You do it so that you can push out messaging to the rest of the organization about your culture. You do it because you want to see your people succeed. You want to create a safe space for them to talk about things. You do it for all of these reasons, and there's a lot of internal recognition among the group to say, like, you know what, I poured into this, and the people, there's that reciprocity that they poured back into me. And I bet you can ask almost any resource group lead across any type of demographic that they stayed in an organization much longer than they probably would have because they had a strong sense of community within that resource group. And again, it can be that formalized, that it's written on the website of your organization. It could also be informalized where you just realize, like, hey, we have this common background. We're all going to be celebrating, we're all going to be fasting for Ramadan together. And now you've created an informal group that it extends beyond the fasting. Now you're doing peer mentorship. You're talking about how you got a promotion. You're talking about how you had an issue with one of your supervisors and how you overcame it, and being able to share that knowledge throughout. So that is really that power of resource groups. So for me, it is definitely a hard underscore retweet, repost, whatever you want to say. They are relevant, right? Because with all of these challenges that are faced, at the heart of an ERG community is going to be those shared experiences. Trust and safety in these groups is going to be expected and often inherent. That's what makes them special, and that's what makes them continue to stay around. I actually had a chief strategy officer the other day ask me if there is a real market for ERG transformation. They are a strategy officer, so they're always going to be thinking about, what is the strategy? What is the development of the business? What are those opportunities that we can go after? And for them, it was like, I mean, are people really interested in transforming their ERGs? Do they care? Right? That's really what they were asking. Do people care? Do the organizations care? Do they care enough to come out their pockets and spend money on having someone else come in and help them optimize and transform their resource groups so that they can level up to their highest potential? And my response was yes and no. So the orgs that are already they already recognize the value of ERGs. They're going to be spending money on them, right? Like they're going to they're going to do it because they already recognize the value. The girls that get it. But if they don't already know, chances are that their resource groups are at the lower end of that maturity model. They're either being established or they're maybe not as coordinated. Again, they may not have a strategy. They may do something for a heritage month or a cultural celebration, and that's kind of the only time that you hear from them. And so if that's the only time you hear from them and the organization thinks of them in that way, then no, they're not going to spend any money because they don't recognize that value, right? They don't recognize what the resource group could potentially bring to the table. They don't see them as this untapped resource, right? They don't see them as a way to just tap into employee sentiment or understand what's happening on the ground floor with their people. They just don't see it. So they don't get it and they're not going to spend the money on it. That's really my response. Y'all let me know if you have a different one, but that is in my experience, that's what I've seen from both consultant side and from being an ERG leader within big organizations. So, what I have for y'all today, again, we're talking about how you can be a resource when you ain't got no resources. So, as a resource group member, a leader, a champion, a sponsor, what can you do to really weather this storm? And it's not just a current storm. Like this, we're in a storm right now, but there are plenty of times, ebbs and flows, when there is some interest and then disinterest. And in the time we're in now, it's like actively rooting out diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, which completely wholeheartedly impacts resource groups. So when you are in the middle of this storm where there is a potential change in organizational sentiment of the utility of a resource group, right? How do you continue to support yourselves? How do you continue to show up for your people, right? We talk about that a lot, but in this aspect, how do you continue to be a resource? So I offer you three things because y'all know I love to offer three things. So number one, I would say, if you want more visibility as a resource group, and really be seen as a resource, right? Keyword resource. Volunteer to be a case study or a focus group to test out some new internal features within the organization. If they are trying out a new survey system, have your group raise their hand and be like, yeah, we'll try that out. We'll be right. Not because you wanna be the crash dummy or like I don't like animal testing, but like the little mouse, right? Like, not because you want to harm your people, it's completely the opposite of that, right? You wanna get ahead of things that are potentially gonna harm your group, okay? So, if you notice something that's being rolled down, you're like, "Hey, this might impact my particular community," raise your hand and say like, we wanna test that out. We wanna see how this is gonna work," right? Not only is it gonna help you and the community in which you're supporting, but it is also going to help the organization recognize, like, yeah, we probably shouldn't use that survey system. It's not going to give us the results that we need. Or maybe we shouldn't use that attrition model to figure out who's staying, who's leaving because it's biased, right? But they won't know that until they've tried it out on the right types of groups. So if you want that visibility, raise your hand. And often you have this cross section of business areas within your membership. Most resource groups are not just tied to one area, like everybody works in IT or everybody works in HR. It's usually a cross section, and your shared or common identity is something that is really about your identity within or outside of the workplace. Thinking about that, right? If you have Blacks in engineering, right? Like, not they're probably not all in the engineering function. They may be in different parts. They might just have like an engineering background. But all that to say, you're probably going to have a cross section. You're probably going to have someone in HR. You're probably going to have someone in IT. You're probably going to have someone in accounting or taxes or whatever, the risk and compliance, whatever kind of parts of your organization you have. There's probably going to be somebody working in there that's a part of your resource group, or you want them to be a part of your resource group. And that is appealing again for those organizational leaders that are looking to gain some more employee sentiment or test things out. So raise your hand. Don't be afraid to do that. I absolutely encourage it. Number two is, I would say, co host events with other groups. So, an example of this, if you have a women in technology resource group, right? They can partner with, engineering, they can partner with your IT team to host maybe a lunch and learn on one of the new technologies that y'all have, right? You could be rolling out maybe agentic AI, not my fave, but you could be rolling it out. Y'all could be rolling out, like if you have an in-house GPT that people are trying to learn how to use, the Women in Tech group is partnering with another group. They're going to host something, but it is not going to be in March. Stay away from Women's History Month because you don't want your resource group to be tied only to the commemorative months, only to the heritage months that may align, right? You want them to see you as being able to offer skills, learning, training, just all be able to offer and contribute something that is separate from that identity. Not because you don't see yourself as the identity, quite the opposite, recognizing that because you have that identity, that you are able to offer perhaps a different lens on how folks have been looking at that technology, right? So, again, going back to having that visibility that I was talking about raising your hand, about having a contribution, you really want to ensure that, okay, if the women's group is going, Women in Tech, ERG is going to be doing something, they're partnering with someone else. It's not going to be in March. It's going to be in September. It's going to be in a different time of year, right? And it is going to demonstrate that, like, yeah, we have these playbooks, we have these programs, we have these events all throughout the year because we're here to support the organization and we're bringing a different lens that maybe you haven't thought about before. We're bringing a different demographic. We're bringing a different cohort that that may have been overlooked or under sponsored, right? And you're pushing that up to some different levels. And it's easier to do that when you don't have no resources if you partner with somebody else because the engineering team, the IT team, they probably got resources that y'all don't. So think about where you can tap into those. And it's amazing if you can work with other resource groups. But again, you really want to step out of that as well. So it's not an either or, it's both and, right? Finding opportunities to partner with others within your organization to continue to boost that visibility and show that you are a resource in a variety of ways. And then lastly, I would say create truly safe spaces for your members, okay? This can mean, a quarterly dinner where members can connect with leaders that look like them or have shared backgrounds. This could be a mentorship program, sponsorship program, coaching program. It could be all doing all of that at the dinner. It could be, y'all meet for lunch or y'all all come into the office and work every third Tuesday. Whatever it is, creating that safe space is going to be integral, and it doesn't cost that much to create the space and to maintain the space. Another way that I've seen this happen and that I have done in the past is, folks get on a call. They get on a call and then they just, it's a place we're venting, right? Stuff is going on, and you want to be able to share that with people that have that same understanding or maybe experiencing that heaviness. We talked about that at the top of the year, right? That there's that collective heaviness. Let people provide a space for them to let all of that out because it's important. Now, my word of caution to all of y'all is be very careful when you create that space and how you create that space and where you create that space. Please recognize that the systems that you may use, the spaces that you are actually in, may not be safe themselves. There are plenty of monitoring spirits out there, so I will leave it at that. Just be safe. Watch out for yourselves, watch out for your people when you are trying to create that space. So I will say, just to reinforce, if you did not get it from the start of this conversation or throughout, that resource groups are absolutely still necessary. They are going to continue to exist both formally and informally. That's just how we operate. That's how marginalized identities and communities operate. We will find each other. We're going to make space for each other and we're going to protect each other. So continue to do that, y'all, because it's really important. I talk about community on probably every episode, and this is just another facet of being able to do that. Okay. So watch out for y'all ERGs. Go to the events that they throw because that's another reason why sometimes they don't last or they don't get the money. So go to them because they are relevant and they are here to support you, all of you. All right. Now we have reached carte blanche, and y'all know that anything goes on carte blanche because it is my show. So today I am actually going to share something that I found interesting over the last week. Again, intentional curiosity. I am always looking for things to talk about with y'all. to expand my research, the research that I'm doing in academia. And one of my research interests I've shared before is an algorithmic bias, specifically in HR practices. So I have primarily looked at hiring and performance management. So this current article in this lawsuit that just came up really piqued my interest. My nerd bell started going off on that one because apparently, Eightfold AI, which is a venture capital backed artificial intelligence hiring platform that is used by PayPal, Microsoft, a bunch of other Fortune 500 companies, is being sued in California for allegedly compiling reports used to screen applicants without their knowledge. I thought that was, let me tell you more, because this was something that was right up my alley of interest. So, Eightfold provides tools that promise to speed up the hiring process by assessing job applicants and predicting whether they would be a good fit for a job using massive amounts of data. Okay. This is coming from resumes, coming from job listings, it's coming from your social media profiles, it's coming from all of these different places. And according to the lawsuit, Fold actually creates talent profiles of their job applicants and job seekers based off of this information that includes personality descriptions like team player or introvert or leader, right? And they also rank the quote unquote quality of education of applicants to predict their future titles and future companies. They should not be doing that. They should not be doing that. I know y'all are thinking like, well, what's the problem with that? Don't HR people do that? No, they do not have the ability, the time, nor the energy to go through and scrape in the way that AI has the capability of doing, right? There are all sorts of reasons why they are not going through and scraping in that way. They may be pulling or taking a glance, but they're not scraping information, collecting it, and then creating a profile based on this information, these personas for specific applicants. That becomes a problem. It's even further a problem, according to the lawsuit, is that, candidates who are applying for jobs at companies that use these type of tools are not given notice and a chance to dispute errors, which is a requirement for the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So many of y'all may know like the Fair Credit Reporting Act from, it might have been actually on a job application that you submitted before. It's a lot of times on like that fine print as you're like trying to click through and submit. You probably don't really pay attention to it. It's also very prevalent. This may be something that you may be more familiar with. It is when it comes to your actual credit report. So, you may have looked at your credit report. Highly recommend y'all look at all three. In the US, look at all three at least once a year. You get a free credit report once a year, the full one with all three agencies. That's my plug. But if you go through them and you look and you're like, wait a minute, they say something I paid for was sent to collections. Well, according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you have the right to then dispute that. You can contact people, you can say like, look, this is incorrect. I need this removed. We need to remediate something because in the US, your credit affects everything. It can affect the, loan that you can get. It can for your car. It can affect the trying to rent a property, like rent a home, rent a boat, right? Like it can affect that, and it can even affect your job prospects, adversely affecting your job prospects, right? Because there's some jobs that do require you to have a credit check or a certain level of credit, right? And so if you do not have the ability to check what's on there and correct anything based on, again, like what these kind of profiles are creating, that becomes problematic because now you're being potentially moved out as a job prospect, moved out of the process for something that you didn't even know was on there or being collected on you. So I know we're in like a super litigious society where everybody has, they want us to on everything, but I think there's some merit here. So this is just another example of tech really outpacing the law, but I'm going to be watching this closely, okay? Because tech is always outpacing the laws that we have, but I want to see what the ruling ends up being on this one. So let me know if you're also following it. And that brings us to our close today. It was amazing talking with all of you, as it is always, I want you to make sure that you are checking out the global collection on KMOB. And of course, be sure to follow us on all platforms. We're going to be telling you a lot of cool news, especially as we move into Black History Month in February. Which is also Heart Health Month, and a bunch of other things happening in February. So make sure you watch this space. All right. I will see you Tuesday for more empowering conversations that lead to empowered experiences. Bye, y'all.